So here we are, folks. And for those of you who haven't been paying attention lately, I guess a couple days ago, February 12th, 2018, it came down that the came down the a blizzard laid off 800 people from their operations, and so now we have a whole bunch of people who don't have jobs, people who are good at what they do, people who are extremely passionate about the whole process of whole process of what it means to be involved in esports and gaming. So I thought it would be an excellent conversation to have the guys from excellent conversation to have the guys from a Hitmarker jobs to have them back again, because I'm all about keeping things as practical as possible, providing some realistic steps for what to do next. Now, so if you've been paying attention on Twitter, when it came down on Tuesday, within 24 hours, there were several other companies that were saying, we're hiring, let us know. And that serves some of the people. Some of the people will get jobs and some will not. So I have with me the guys are going to talk about some next steps to take. So guys, welcome back. Thank you very much for making time for me. I know that the past couple of days have been extremely busy for you with all the outreach on social media. So just to kind of frame this a little bit, sort of talk about sort of talk about from your perspective what you see when somebody loses their job. What should they do in the next 24 to 48 hours, and then going forward, when it comes to the job search and things like that? Go ahead.
Hi, Bill. Good evening or good morning where you are. So you've got Rich and Cam this time from Hitmarker at the end of our working day again. So yeah, the news broke Tuesday. I think it had been put in the esports press a few days previously that something was going to happen. So people were kind of aware there was a bit of a leak before it happened. So it wasn't that much of a surprise when the news officially broke. But yeah, so it came down that Blizzard posted record financial numbers and on the same day decided to cut 800 staff. Not the greatest timing, first and foremost. So there was kind of a lot of anger on the timeline that we saw on social media, and probably quite justified, because when on one hand you've got the CEO of the company saying, or the CFO of the company saying, it's been a record year, we've made millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then takes a $15 million bonus apparently, and then people are out of work. It's tough. But the first point I want to make in terms of just like how big this is for esports, and to put it into context, is that 800 people, full-time staff, got made redundant. If you go on Hitmarker right now, you will not find 800 paid full-time jobs in the esports industry as a whole in the last 30 days. So just to put that into perspective, like, more people have just been laid off than there are genuine esports jobs available at this moment in time.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how big it is. I mean, I do understand that Blizzard isn't just esports. It's got like a big gaming side to it, and there are a lot of gaming roles out there as well. But from our perspective, that's like, the numbers are absolutely huge. So we saw on Twitter, and you probably saw, me and Cam will talk back and forward about kind of our tips for what people can do. But it was really good to kind of see the community rallying around immediately. So as soon as the news broke, like you said, straight away, tons of hiring managers from big companies, especially companies who are based near Blizzard in Irvine and a few of the other locations, started suggesting, saying like, look, if you've got community management skills, or if you're a game developer, or if you've got social media skills, then we're hiring, we're expanding the team, so reach out over DM. So kind of the first tip from me would be to get on social media, if the people haven't already, because maybe it's not the first thing that you want to do when you get made redundant.
Right.
But speed and time is of the essence, because with 800 people fresh into the market, there's only so many opportunities available at any one time. And people could, I'm sure that some of the people that have lost jobs have already been hired by companies.
Okay.
So if people are still at this point on Thursday and haven't started looking for the next job yet, then getting to that quickly and doing it like now would be a huge thing. I think get there first. But hit social media, search for Blizzard, search for Activision Blizzard, and you'll find a timeline full of companies offering jobs and a timeline full of people offering professional help and networking advice and things like that. So that would be tip number one for what to do.
Okay, perfect. Now, so there's that first 24 to 48 hours that you have the initial outreach, and you strike while the iron is hot. And then there's sort of the letdown, the anxiety sort of fades a bit, and then you get back into the grind of the actual hiring process, because while hiring managers will say we have jobs open, we are hiring, it isn't as simple as making a phone call and sending an email. There's a long process to that. So when somebody is laid off and they do what they're supposed to do, that they have the resume, it's sent off, it's ready to go, they're making contacts, they're on social media, how can they, I guess, maybe it's the right phrase, for somebody who is dealing with that anxiety and then immediately get some sort of a contact, how do you propose that they deal with their anxiety? I guess have a better understanding of, yes, you're in the pipeline for the hiring process, but it's not going to happen in 3 days, 5 days. There are times it will take at least 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And when you think about it, these people who have been let go, it's ranged from everyone from like junior staff to the more senior people with, double-digit years of experience in Blizzard. So you're going to be getting a lot of people coming out of that haven't really adjusted their resume for quite a substantial time. And in that time, they're going to have picked up a lot more skills. They're going to become a lot more knowledgeable about what they do and how they can speak about that and how they can present it in a way that makes it look attractive to employers. So coming off the back of the news, I think everyone needs to first take a step back and just think, here are my skills, here's my resume, how can I improve it to make it as exceptional as I can now that I have this experience with Blizzard? Because the layoffs are obviously terrible for people to have gone through, but they've come out with the experience that will help them get a better position or get another position in the industry, because it is still a company that everyone will recognize. And while we're in this time so close to the layoffs, people are going to be looking for the Blizzard name on resumes even more so than usual, because they're going to think these are people that aren't out of work for any bad reason. They're people out of work because the company has gone through layoffs. So if you look at your resume, add that Blizzard experience right at the top, frame it in the best way that you can, speak about all the great achievements you had there. I think that's sort of step number one for people that have come off these layoffs. And then, yeah, like I said, start going through the pipeline, because while people are posting jobs and while people are saying that they're hiring, it is still a process to go through. And for people that have been at the company for a while, that may be an unfamiliar process after all the time they spent with Blizzard. So just sort of staying strong, just getting back into that job hunter mentality where you can't take things personally. It's a tough world, so you've got to have sort of a thick skin around you. But just remember that you were at Blizzard for a reason, and that was because you're good at your job, and you weren't laid off because you're bad at your job. So I think trying to have a positive attitude and surround yourself with people who are going to be realistic with you, like you're seeing on Twitter where people are offering their ears if people want to rant or ask for advice or anything like that. The community has banded together really well to help people in this pipeline. So I think make use of that. And if you ever do need someone to lean on, like, our DMs are open. We've got an email that's displayed on our website. You can shoot us an email. People on Twitter are constantly offering their advice to other people that have been laid off. So utilizing those forms and realizing that this is a very tough experience, but you're not alone in it, I think it's definitely something to keep up the morale. And that will really help the job search in general, I think, if you're not sort of looking at the doom and gloom of it, if you're realizing that it's another opportunity now to continue working in the industry that you love and the industry that you got into.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, and that whole line of thought, I mean, I've seen it from multiple people saying, hey, this is no big deal, relax, you have skills, you are valued. It's just, this is one of the realities of being is one of the realities of being in business. So let's sort of take this to a macro level and take this to a macro level. And I want to go back to what you said, Rich, right off the bat, that there were more people let go than you have actual paid jobs on your site right now.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Jobs full stop, not just paid jobs, just full stop.
Okay. So that observation for me is really interesting because I think it speaks to a larger thought process that's been going on that we've seen from major esports organizations. That you have groups like Hoptic Gaming that are basically selling off who they are. You have Hecko Fox, who's letting go high level talent, and they're letting go staff. I mean, if you're gonna let go the best Street Fighter player on the planet and choose not to re-sign him, what does that say? So are we looking at a huge overall correction in the business, or is there actually or is there something else going on here?
It's funny because, I mean, I've been, obviously, like you are, I'm on social media every day, and people have been predicting that esports has been kind of set for a correction imminently for quite a while. Probably the whole of last year, people kept saying, like, the bubble's going to burst, things are going to change. And maybe we are starting to see that. I think the main thing that I see people point towards is kind of like the Overwatch League, in terms of how much those franchise spots got sold for, in terms of what kind of audience that's attracted, in terms of what kind of revenue it's generated through viewing rights and people actually coming to the arena to watch the games live. It probably isn't what a lot of the investors were sold on when they bought those spots in the league. And I think that does speak to a wider problem with esports. Still, esports as a professional business is still like a super young industry versus most of the established industries out there. And the perspective that I have on it, being like someone who manages a startup company in the space and someone who came into the space pretty late, is kind of that the people are kind of struggling to find something that works, struggling to find a sustainable business model. Like there's a lot of companies now trying to go down the cryptocurrency / esports route because that seems like kind of an obvious tie-up.
Yep.
But there's probably 2 dozen companies going at that nail with the hammers, and only a couple are going to be successful, you would imagine.
Right.
Even in our own industry, you had kind of companies offering jobs websites who've like fallen by the wayside from what it looks like in the past year. So competitors of ours who used to be active every day, posting jobs every day, going to like not posting jobs anymore, not posting on Twitter. So they've kind of realized that maybe even the job space isn't a profitable space. I mean, speaking from our own unique perspective, it's kind of like we think that the esports scene in general is probably still too young to support Hitmarker as a profitable business venture, even for the next 2 or 3 years potentially.
Wow.
Because for us to make money, you would need all the esports companies, significant hiring companies signed up, posting jobs, sponsoring listings, paying for recruitment services. I've got no doubt that we can generate some good money from a Hitmarker perspective, because we're in quite a unique position in that Hitmarker doesn't care what esport you're interested in. It doesn't care if you're Overwatch or Call of Duty or CSGO. And there's not many companies in the esports space who are so widespread as we are. So I think we're quite fortunate in a way that we don't live or die by how Activision or Blizzard perform, or we don't really live or die by how popular Fortnite or Apex Legends is. It's kind of like, if esports as a whole is going well and some games are doing well, then we're always going to get jobs and we're always going to get companies signing up because the demand will be there. Maybe what's happening here is kind of people are realizing that there was an artificial demand in some elements of the scene, which was driven by good salespeople, good business development people, who sold a dream to investors. And you've probably dealt with VCs and angel investors yourself throughout your professional career. They aren't the most patient people in the world usually. So if they're not seeing a return on investment quickly, or they're not seeing positive signs quickly, then they are the kind of people who will cut and run. And I kind of think they'll move on to the next big idea that they get sold on. And I think that's pretty much what you've seen at Infinite and Optic, and now at Activision, is kind of a realignment in terms of getting back to basics, putting things towards what you knew you were good at before.
Right.
But it's hard. Like, I'm sure I've seen that you've been involved in a few different companies. I'm sure you do consultancy for different people. There's a lot of people in the scene who are scratching around trying to find something that's going to make money for them, whether they do like tournaments or they provide services like ours. Not a lot of stuff is being hugely successful and making money, even in the media side of things.
Right.
You'll have seen stuff from Esports maybe in the last couple of weeks where they were criticized for kind of the rates that they're offering, and a lot of their full-time staff got released in terms of their full-time rate and stuff.
Yep.
So even the big media companies who had such a stranglehold on the scene, maybe they aren't doing so well anymore because it's getting harder and harder to monetize content. So yeah, it is tough. It does feel like things are changing this year, and even though we're only into February, as a whole, I still don't think it's very early. On a whole, I still don't think it's like the prophets of doom are here and the horsemen of the apocalypse are. I think ultimately people are realizing that maybe the sponsorship revenue route and the TV rights and viewing rights revenue route isn't necessarily the way to go in the short term. Because there's still examples of games that are doing phenomenally well, like Fortnite, which hasn't served its esports scene so well lately.
Right.
And Apex Legends is going to be huge. I know it's a meme basically that people are already looking for like pro players.
Yeah, they are, yeah.
But if you're an entrepreneur, if you're like an investor, you've got some foresight, you're kind of looking at the numbers from that game, thinking that EA, or hoping that EA might be able to do a better job of their esports scene than they maybe have with some of the other titles that they have. And it's kind of people taking a gamble while people are cheap, because surely if you want to be signing a pro roster for Apex Legends, they're never going to be cheaper than they are in the first week or two of the game's exist.
Exactly. So obviously the esports business on the whole has taken a few hits lately, and it's what I see as the source of some of this downturn is that we had these expectations that were just high up in the clouds. And when you said that, smart salespeople and business development people sold investors on these high expectations, and now the expectations are not necessarily being met. So now the investors are like, you're not giving me the return that I thought I would get. So obviously the whole market is going to actually correct itself. So for the average person, for the person who spends their time being a part of an org, creating content, social media, managing teams, what are some things that they can start doing right now? So you have somebody with a job, and they're doing okay, they're being paid, but they're seeing this news and they're kind of going, wow, I don't know what to think about all this. What are some things that people can start doing right now to have themselves prepared for the time where they might actually lose their job?
Yeah, I think one thing that people can do, and something that we always sort of endorse as much as possible, is not being centered around one skill set. So for myself, when I started in esports, I did written content only. And although I enjoyed that, and although I didn't get paid for that, it wasn't enough for me to be able to find a full-time job.
Okay.
So I ended up having to make a few websites, learn sort of SEO and website development and stuff like that to make myself sort of a bit more rounded and a bit able to do more for a company.
Okay.
So I think if people could do that early on and just identify their main skill, look at what they're doing and what they love, and then build up relevant skills around that, I think that makes you a lot sort of harder to turn down from an employer's point of view than if you're sort of a bit more one-dimensional and a bit more focused around just one sort of primary skill. So one thing we say to a lot of people who come to us that are graphic designers, for example, is that there's a lot of graphic designers in esports, but how many of them can also do motion work and photography, for example. If you can come to a company with sort of those 3 skills rather than being a sole graphic designer,
Right.
then you will stand out 9 times out of 10 because you've just got a lot more to sort of bring. So that's obviously not like being negative on anyone that is a solely graphic designer. But I think one thing that is definitely always useful is just adding to that skill set with other things that are relevant and that an employer will feasibly use in your job role. Because if we're talking about esports sort of correcting itself, then you may not get those sort of jobs that are a dedicated graphic designer. It may be a visual content creator. And in situations like that, for a company that may not be able to afford 2 members of staff to take on those 2 roles, then having motion graphic work and graphic design work in your portfolio, it does levels for your application, and it really does make you a lot more attractive. So I think that's one thing people can start doing now, and also sort of future-proofs you if you ever need a backup plan, because you may see a lot of people on the back of these layoffs telling people that esports is awesome, but it doesn't hurt to have a backup plan in place. So developing your skills more, I mean, it's skills that can be used in any industry, anywhere. I mean, any industry needs great images, any industry needs marketers. So if you build up more skills, then you're not restricting yourself to esports. You're now a talented professional that's working in esports, and you can move to wherever you wanted to if you needed to. And that's like Rich was saying, this isn't like doom and gloom, but in terms of what people can do, I think adding skills to their like original roster is always useful, and just gives you that freedom and that confidence that your skills are so valuable for a company that you'll never get in a position where you'll struggle to find jobs because you're that much of an asset to a company.
Okay. So
yeah, I kind of agree with that. I'll just cut in, sorry, Bill, to say that.
Sure.
Just to kind of put in context the not doom and gloom element, so it's not just words. Like, as bad as it is, or as bad as it can seem for people, specifically writers and specifically people who are close to the Blizzard stuff, as you've probably seen, we are still posting more and more paid jobs month on month. So the scene is still growing overall, and I do think the opportunities in terms of full-time paid opportunities are still growing and growing because there's more startups coming in with funding who are kind of doing things in a bit more of a measured fashion than some of the bigger companies have. So that's positive, but I think Cam's advice is great, but you need to kind of be a certain type of person to be able to diversify your skill set. It's like, it's easy to say that to someone,
Right.
but it's a lot harder to actually go and learn a second skill and do different things like Cam himself did. He probably finds it quite easy to suggest that because he's the type of person who can like spend time to go and learn a new skill and do something different. So my bit of advice on that would be to do something that everybody can do, and that's free and is usually pretty easy. If you're in an esports job or not, build your network up. Use LinkedIn, like I know you're a big advocate of. Kind of
Yes.
make good introductions to people. Ask them to make introductions to other people. So you might have a paying job right now, but if you end up in a situation next week where you don't have a paying job, the easiest thing to do is then to reach out to your network, people that you know or you've spoken to say, have you got any opportunities available? Can you put me in touch with somebody who might be looking for a designer, social media manager, community manager, etc. And that's free. It's easy. You'll probably learn something while you're doing it because you'll hopefully be connecting with people who are valuable. So I think if you can't spare the time, or you don't think you can learn a new skill, if you're just really good at something, one thing in particular, then the best kind of safety net, let's call it, would be to build a network up and just to make yourself known to people.
Perfect. Okay. So I guess from what I'm hearing you guys say, the whole takeaway is, be patient with yourself. Don't be afraid to reach out. Don't be afraid to think about something that isn't esports, because there have been other jobs before esports, and there will be other jobs after it's here. So as we kind of shut this down, so what do you see for yourself and for what you guys do? I mean, I heard you say you don't think that your site and your company is going to be super viable for at least another 2 years. Oh, well, what is that? So for somebody like yourself, I mean, this is your startup. You're building this. To wait another 2 years for it to be something that you can just focus solely on that, for something like that, for some people, that time frame is so long, yet when you get through it, it doesn't seem like very much. So sort of talk about your own perspective there.
Yeah, and it is kind of a time thing. So we are, at the moment, we're completely self-funded. We don't have any external investment at all, which I think helps because we don't have any external pressures in terms of hitting revenue milestones by 6 months, by the next quarter.
Right.
I do think it's inevitable that we're going to have to go to market and seek investment in the near future, just because the opportunity to be esports as kind of incumbent jobs website is there. We think we've kind of taken the opportunity as it exists now, but there's still a lot more that we would like to do that we can't do because we are limited in terms of manpower or budget and that kind of stuff, which would be things like building out the feature set of the website, spending more money on marketing to get more companies and candidates coming to use the website instead of having to rely so much on social media and recommendation and that kind of stuff. So we've got kind of a clear roadmap in place. I do think the jobs website can be a nice little kind of profitable company if it's run very efficiently in the next 2 years. But I'm talking in terms of making it into a real significant business that can be a big employee base, pay people good salaries, have full-time staff both here and in the States, because one of the big things we would like to do is kind of get someone on the West Coast who can make it so that Hitmarker has more of a kind of round-the-clock presence, because as it stands, the time difference between me and you today is so significant that sometimes having these calls or doing business with people based on the West Coast can be difficult because it's such a big gap. And obviously a lot of our customer support requests come through out of hours as well, just because the time difference is so big. So expanding, it would be nice. My vision for the company and our vision for the company is to keep like growing the feature set, onboarding more users, getting the bigger companies in the esports scene posting on Hitmarker instead of posting on Indeed and LinkedIn and all that kind of stuff. Because I do understand why the companies, because Indeed and LinkedIn are familiar, they've got good features. You feel as though you're getting access to like a wide range of candidates, but I do think we are narrowing the gap to where you can post a job on Hitmarker and you'll probably get more candidates, if not fewer candidates, but of a more concentrated quality, and certainly a lot more concentrated in terms of the esports experience that they have. But yeah, I think there's a lot of this kind of stuff in esports where there's a lot of people start businesses and you'll see the business go under in 3, 6, 9, 12 months because they kind of realize it's not as easy as going and paying $45 to get the LLC after the name. Whatever state you're in, and then thinking I've got the greatest idea in the world. I'm gonna make money tomorrow. Unfortunately it's just not the way it works. So I think for us that our horizon is kind of like 2 years towards being a serious business, 5 years towards being a really, really serious business, and in the meantime just kind of growing organically and running the thing as efficiently as we can.
Yeah, I think it's important to everybody who listens to this to definitely take away the fact that it's important to be patient, not only with yourself but with the industry. It's very young. I've said it to multiple people. Our expectations are entirely too high, and we're going through the correction right now. It's happening. It'll probably get worse before it gets better, but it will get better because you can't see the revenue numbers that are out there you can't see the passion and the revenue numbers that are out there and just sort of pass this off as just one of those things that kids do. There's just too much here, but I think that we're getting ahead of ourselves and we're definitely seeing that right now. So guys, thanks for making time for me and for where I'm at. It's currently from where I'm at, it's in the morning on the West Coast, and you guys are just finishing up your day over there. So thank you very much for taking time to talk to me, guys, today. I appreciate it very much.
No problem.
Bill.
Anytime, Bill. Speak soon.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Hey, check out Hitmarker Jobs at Hitmarker Jobs on Twitter. Check out their website, hitmarkerjobs.com, and you'll see more from these guys soon.
If you liked that, hit the subscribe button for more interviews and other great sports and esports content. Make sure to also like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter to stay up to date on all the news from your favorite sports and esports players and teams. From our house to yours.